What's happening across America right now isn't just another news cycle. And if you think this is going to blow over like previous protests, you need to understand that we've crossed into entirely new territory, where the rules have fundamentally changed, and your family's safety depends on how quickly you can adapt to this reality. I'm here to walk you through exactly what's unfolding, why this weekend and June 14th represent potential tipping points that could trigger martial law, and most importantly, what you need to do right now to protect your family when normal systems fail. If you're new here, I create content for people who understand that preparedness isn't paranoia, it's responsibility. So hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because the information I'm sharing today could literally save your life. And I need you to share this video with every family member and friend who still thinks nothing serious is happening because the window for peaceful preparation is closing fast. Let me start by giving you the facts about what's happening right now, because mainstream media either isn't reporting the full scope or they're deliberately downplaying the organized nature of what we're seeing across the country. Operation at Large is currently deploying more than 5,000 federal personnel and up to 21,000 National Guard troops in a coordinated enforcement operation that represents the largest federal mobilization on American soil since World War II. And this isn't just immigration enforcement. This is a fundamental shift where 45% of all FBI agents in the 25 largest field offices are being pulled from counterterrorism and financial crimes to work immigration full-time. And when you see reports of protests in Los Angeles, what they're not telling you is that President Trump has deployed 2,000 National Guard troops and 700 active-duty Marines to operate against American citizens in American cities. And Governor Newsom wasn't consulted. He was simply informed after the fact, which represents a complete breakdown of the traditional federal-state relationship that should concern every American regardless of political affiliation. But here's what makes this completely different from anything we've seen before. These aren't spontaneous protests anymore, and the evidence shows organized groups are paying people up to $1,200 per week to participate in violent demonstrations, which transforms this from grassroots political expression into professional agitation funded by unknown sources. And reports are coming in showing protesters using live ammunition against federal forces, conducting systematic infrastructure attacks by drilling holes in commercial vehicle tires at truck stops. And foreign religious and political leaders are calling for their estimated 4.5 million followers within the United States to engage in acts of violence during this period of instability. This weekend represents an immediate escalation point, with massive protests planned for Saturday across Chicago, Tampa, New York, Texas, and California, and military sources are indicating they've received unofficial orders suggesting go time across the United States, which means we're looking at potential major confrontations in the next 72 hours. While June 14th still looms as the ultimate flashpoint, with hundreds of No Kings protests scheduled in every single state, while 28 heavy tanks roll through Washington during the president's military parade, creating a perfect storm scenario where any miscalculation could trigger nationwide martial law. Right now, today, every time you step outside your door, you're entering an unprotected area where violence can erupt without warning. And your first priority needs to be going completely gray, which means removing every flag, sticker, political sign, or identifier from your vehicles and property that gives any indication of your beliefs, occupation, or affiliations, because your neighbors might decide you're the enemy based on something as simple as a bumper sticker. And this isn't about hiding your convictions, this is about survival. And I've seen too many videos of families with children in their cars being attacked by mobs simply because they happen to drive through the wrong area at the wrong time. And when people are being paid to create violence and foreign powers are encouraging domestic attacks, normal rules of civil discourse no longer apply. You need to understand that the people involved in these operations are specifically looking for confrontation. They're trained in infrastructure sabotage techniques, and they will attack anyone they perceive as opposition without regard for whether you have children in your vehicle. So if you see groups of people gathering anywhere, you stop and turn around immediately. Don't try to drive through protest areas. Don't take alternative routes around them. And absolutely do not attempt to exercise your rights or prove points, because your job is keeping your family safe, not making political statements. School and work become tactical decisions, because while life continues during civil unrest, You need to understand that these groups will burn the city down around you while you're working your 9 to 5. And you can't call your power company to explain that it was too dangerous to go to work because they'll shut off your lights regardless of the security situation. So make every decision based on threat assessment rather than normal routines. And if your regular routes take you through areas where protests are happening or likely to happen, you need alternative routes planned and practiced right now, because navigation under stress becomes exponentially more difficult when you're trying to figure out directions while avoiding violence. The key principle that's going to keep you alive is avoidance over confrontation. Your vehicle provides protection only if you use it to escape, not if you drive into dangerous situations thinking you can push through, or that people will respect your right to travel. Understanding the path to martial law isn't about conspiracy theories. It's about recognizing the legal mechanisms that are already in place and how quickly they can be activated when conditions deteriorate beyond civilian control capabilities. The president declared a national emergency at the southern border on Inauguration Day, calling it an invasion, and he ordered the Secretary of Defense and Homeland Security to submit reports within 90 days with recommendations on whether to invoke the Insurrection Act of 1807, and that deadline was April 20th. The Insurrection Act allows the president to deploy military forces to put down rebellions within the United States and help local law enforcement deal with domestic violence. Once invoked, the Posse Comitatus Act, that normally blocks military involvement in civilian law enforcement, gets suspended, which means active duty military can operate against American citizens on American soil with broad authority. The progression from emergency declarations to Insurrection Act to martial law represents a steady escalation of federal power that bypasses normal constitutional protections. We're already seeing elements of this with Marines operating in Los Angeles without state coordination. When martial law gets declared, they suspend all local laws, civil authority, and sometimes local judiciaries, replacing them with temporary military laws and tribunals where the commanding officer has virtually unlimited authority to govern an area. Your constitutional rights effectively get paused, banking systems can be restricted, travel requires military permission, and basic services we take for granted get controlled by military authorities who have broad discretionary power over civilian activities. The immediate impacts on your daily life would include checkpoints, curfews, restricted movement, military control of communications, and the suspension of normal legal protections. While martial law has been imposed at least 68 times in limited areas throughout American history, the modern version would look different because of technology and the current threat environment. The longest period of martial law in United States history was nearly 3 years in Hawaii during World War II. But most implementations range from a few days to a few weeks, depending on how quickly civilian authority can be restored. When normal systems break down, your survival depends on how well you've prepared your resource foundation. And I'm going to walk you through what you actually need versus what people think they need, because there's a big difference between theoretical preparedness and practical survival. Water storage gets talked about constantly, but most folks drastically underestimate their actual needs, since the standard recommendation of 1 gallon per person per day assumes minimal activity and moderate temperatures. During stressful situations, your water requirements increase significantly, so you really need to store at least double the standard recommendation, with multiple purification methods available. Food storage should emphasize calorie density and preparation simplicity, not fancy gourmet meals. While freeze-dried foods are excellent, they're expensive, so focus on canned goods, rice, beans, and pasta that provide substantial calories at reasonable costs and can be prepared with minimal fuel and water. And think beyond just basic nutrition, because comfort foods become psychologically critical during stressful times. Stuff like coffee, chocolate, and familiar snacks can provide enormous morale benefits that might just make the difference between maintaining family cohesion and dealing with emotional breakdowns. Medical supplies require careful consideration of your family's specific needs. While basic first aid supplies are obvious, you also need to think about prescription medications, dental care, and preventive health measures, since medical care becomes limited or unavailable during extended disruptions. So stock extra prescription medications when possible, and include over-the-counter medications that address common health issues like pain relievers, anti-diarrheal meds, allergy medicines, and basic antibiotics that can handle problems when professional medical care isn't accessible. Consider sanitation supplies beyond just basic toilet paper, because soap, sanitizer, feminine hygiene products, and waste disposal materials become critical when normal services are disrupted. Bleach serves multiple purposes, including water purification, surface sanitizing, and waste management. Tools and equipment should emphasize versatility and manual operation, since battery-powered devices fail when batteries die, so hand-cranked or solar-powered alternatives provide long-term reliability. Basic repair tools like duct tape, zip ties, rope, and multi-tools can address a whole bunch of problems you'll probably encounter. Financial preparation means having cash in small denominations, because electronic payment systems represent single points of failure during crisis situations. Credit cards, debit cards, and digital payment systems all depend on functioning networks and power systems that may not be available. So, small bills are crucial since making change gets difficult, and $20 bills and smaller provide transaction flexibility. You should store cash in multiple locations, so you're not dependent on access to a single hiding place. Your vehicle becomes your lifeline during civil unrest, but it's also a primary target. And the current threats require specific defensive preparations that go way beyond normal emergency preparedness. Protesters are systematically attacking commercial vehicles by drilling holes in tires and cutting valve stems to disrupt supply chains. And they're targeting private vehicles that drive through protest areas by jumping on cars with families inside and attacking drivers they perceive as opposition. Keep fuel tanks topped off whenever possible, not just for range, but because gas stations may close, run out of fuel, or become unsafe during disruptions. Store extra fuel safely at home, following proper safety protocols. But even more importantly, have multiple route options planned for every destination, and avoid protest areas entirely. Because the key principle is avoidance over confrontation. Current threats require tire repair kits, portable air compressors, and spare tires in good condition, since protesters are targeting tires systematically. You need to learn how to change tires and perform basic repairs before you actually need these skills, because tow trucks just won't be available when you need them. Route planning has to include real-time threat assessment, where you monitor social media, scanner apps, and local news for current protest locations before traveling anywhere. You need primary routes, secondary alternatives, and emergency exit routes for every regular destination, practiced regularly so navigation becomes automatic under stress. Vehicle security modifications include keeping a windshield hammer and seatbelt cutter tool within reach of the driver for situations where your vehicle is trapped or under attack. Consider tinted windows for privacy and protection from thrown objects, run-flat tires or tire foam that can get you to safety after tire damage, and fire extinguishers rated for automotive use, since vehicle fires could result from attacks. Emergency vehicle supplies need customization for current threats, including bolt cutters or wire cutters that can help you bypass roadblocks or chained gates if you need unconventional escape routes. Extra water and basic food should be stored in your vehicle beyond your personal emergency kit, because you might need to shelter in your vehicle for extended periods. Alternative transportation methods provide backup options when vehicles aren't viable. Bicycles can navigate areas where cars can't pass. They're quiet, don't require fuel, and can be carried over obstacles, so include bicycle repair tools and spare parts as part of your mobility planning. Walking preparation becomes critical when vehicles aren't an option. This means comfortable, broken-in boots, maps of your local area that don't depend on GPS or electronic devices, and practicing walking distances you might need to cover in emergency situations. Your physical fitness directly impacts your family's survival options when traditional transportation fails. Information warfare is happening right now, and your ability to distinguish truth from manipulation could literally mean the difference between life and death for your family. The current situation involves multiple layers of deception and organized influence operations designed to maximize chaos and confusion among the American population. Understanding the organized nature of current violence helps you assess threats accurately, because this isn't spontaneous civil unrest. We have documented evidence of structured financial support for violent protesters, with payments up to $1,200 per week for participation. When protesters are receiving organized funding, you're dealing with professional agitation rather than grassroots political expression. Primary communication systems will be overwhelmed or deliberately restricted during major civil unrest. Cell phone networks get overloaded when everyone tries to communicate simultaneously, and government authorities may restrict or monitor electronic communications during declared emergencies. So, you need independent communication capabilities that don't depend on commercial infrastructure. Ham radio provides communication that reaches locally with handheld radios and across the country with more sophisticated equipment. You should get licensed and practice using equipment before emergencies occur, while connecting with local ham radio groups to understand communication protocols and emergency networks. Scanner devices allow monitoring of emergency services communications, because police, fire, and emergency medical services often provide real-time information about local conditions that doesn't appear in news reports. Many scanner apps work on smartphones, but dedicated devices provide better reliability and battery life when you need them most. Two-way radios for family communication work when cell phones fail, and FRS or GMRS radios provide several miles of range without requiring licenses for basic use. But you should include extra batteries or rechargeable options, and establish communication schedules and channels with family members ahead of time. Social media monitoring provides early warning of developing situations, but it requires careful evaluation of sources. Mainstream media reporting often downplays violence or mischaracterizes organized attacks as peaceful protests, so multiple source verification becomes essential for accurate threat assessment. Foreign influence operations are actively encouraging violence within the United States through religious and political leaders from hostile nations, calling for their followers within the U.S. to engage in acts of violence during this period of instability. This represents coordinated attacks on American stability orchestrated by foreign powers that you need to recognize and account for in your planning. Create information verification protocols now where you never act on single-source information during crisis situations. Cross-reference everything with at least 2 independent sources, and pay attention to timing because information releases during crisis situations are often coordinated for maximum psychological impact on the population. Mental preparation often receives less attention than physical supplies, but psychological resilience determines how effectively you use your preparations. Stress reactions impair decision-making, reduce problem-solving ability, and create destructive conflicts within families and groups when you need unity and clear thinking the most. Your mindset becomes your most critical survival tool, because survival isn't just about gear or technical skills. It's about mental flexibility, reading environments, and making calculated decisions under pressure when everyone around you is panicking or making emotional rather than rational choices. Leadership skills become essential when normal authorities are absent or ineffective, because someone needs to make decisions, coordinate activities, and maintain group cohesion. These skills can be developed through practice in normal situations like family activities, workplace projects, and community involvement, where you learn to guide people through challenges without creating additional stress or conflict. Family dynamics change dramatically under stress, and preparing for these changes prevents destructive conflicts that can tear your family apart when you need to work together for survival. Children may regress behaviorally, adults may become short-tempered, and normal family roles may need adjustment that everyone understands ahead of time. Decision-making protocols help groups function effectively under pressure by establishing who makes what types of decisions, how disagreements are resolved, and when to change plans. Clear protocols prevent arguments and paralysis when quick decisions could mean the difference between safety and danger for your family. Stress management techniques help maintain effectiveness during prolonged difficult situations, and regular exercise, adequate sleep, and familiar routines provide stability during chaos. So, include comfort items and stress relief activities in your preparations that help family members cope with uncertainty and fear. Personal defense considerations must balance protection with legal compliance, because you need to understand local laws regarding self-defense tools and weapons. But more importantly, training and practice are more valuable than equipment, and knowing when to avoid confrontation rather than engage often determines whether your family survives intact. Civil unrest safety is your responsibility, and you can't assume that law enforcement will be available to protect you because they'll have their hands full with larger problems. So, don't expect sympathy just because you're caught in the middle, even if your kids are with you or you're disabled. Understanding crowd dynamics requires specific strategies for safety, where you get to the edge of crowds to escape rather than trying to move through the center. Crowds move like liquids, flowing around obstacles and building pressure at constriction points. So position yourself where you can exit easily rather than being trapped in the center, where escape becomes impossible when violence erupts. Network building provides resources beyond individual preparation, and connecting with like-minded neighbors, friends, and community members who share your concerns about preparedness allows you to coordinate resources and skills rather than duplicating efforts. Different people bring different capabilities like medical training, mechanical skills, communication abilities, or leadership experience that benefit everyone when properly organized. Skill development becomes more valuable than equipment accumulation because you can learn first aid, basic mechanical repair, food preservation, and other practical skills that don't break, get stolen, or run out of batteries like equipment does. Community integration helps establish your position as a valuable neighbor rather than a potential threat. Participating in neighborhood activities, volunteering for community projects, and building positive relationships before you need them ensures that known, trusted neighbors receive cooperation during emergencies, while strangers generate suspicion and hostility. Intelligence gathering requires systematic attention to local conditions and threats, where you monitor local crime patterns, understand gang territories and activities, and know which areas become problematic during normal times. This information helps predict where problems might develop during larger disruptions. Resource diversification prevents single-point failures in your preparation strategy by maintaining multiple food sources, water supplies, communication methods, and transportation options that provide redundancy when individual systems fail. You should avoid putting all your resources in one location, or depending on single solutions that could be compromised or destroyed. Testing and validation of your preparations reveals weaknesses before you depend on them. So practice power outages by turning off your main breaker and living on backup systems. Test communication plans during normal times to identify problems, and try cooking with emergency stoves and eating stored foods regularly. Recovery planning helps transition from emergency mode to normal operations when situations stabilize. Understanding what infrastructure needs to be rebuilt, what services need to be restored, and how to reconnect with normal economic and social systems positions you to contribute to community recovery rather than being dependent on outside assistance that may not come. Legal and administrative considerations help protect your interests when normal legal systems resume operation, so document damage, maintain records of emergency actions, and understand how emergency powers affect your legal rights and obligations during and after crisis periods. Resource security prevents loss of supplies to theft or spoilage by distributing supplies across multiple locations, securing storage areas properly, and monitoring your supplies regularly. You should include security measures that prevent both discovery and access by unauthorized people who might take what you've worked to accumulate. The time for gradual preparation is past, and if you don't have basic supplies, transportation alternatives, and communication plans ready right now, you need to implement them immediately. The current violence level and organized nature of the threats mean normal rules no longer apply to your family's safety. This isn't about living in fear or hoping for societal collapse, but we need to be completely honest about what we're facing. Foreign-backed groups are paying professional agitators to create maximum chaos. Infrastructure attacks are disrupting supply chains systematically, and armed confrontation with federal forces is being actively encouraged by hostile influences. Your immediate priority is keeping your family safe through the next few days and weeks by removing political identifiers from your property and vehicles, avoiding protest areas entirely, having emergency supplies ready and evacuation plans prepared, and monitoring communications for real-time threat information that could save your lives. Whether this weekend becomes a turning point or June 14th triggers martial law depends on how the current violence escalates. But your preparation today determines your family's survival tomorrow, regardless of which scenario unfolds. The current situation represents the most serious domestic threat most Americans have faced in their lifetimes. Whether military commanders implement martial law this weekend, June 14th or later, being prepared gives you options. Having options gives you control, and having control gives you the confidence to make good decisions when others are panicking and making fatal mistakes. Your job is not saving the nation or restoring order, because that's beyond individual capability. Your job is surviving what's coming with your family intact by focusing on what you can control. I need you to share this video with every family member and friend who might still think nothing serious is happening, because their survival could depend on the information you share with them today. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on, because I'll be updating you on developments as they happen, from my family to yours. Please stay safe, stay alert, and be ready to act quickly as situations develop, because the next few days and weeks will determine the direction of our country, and your family's survival depends on how well you've prepared for what's coming next.